This idea of Christianity as spineless and feeble is profoundly erroneous. The saints possess the power to dominate the masses, but they choose the very opposite. They submit themselves to their fellow men, and by doing so, win imperishable love for themselves. Victory gained by force never lasts for long, and by its very nature brings not glory but shame to mankind. To love enemies makes man like unto Christ right at the heart of his being, and is the beginning of his deification. This, according to the Starets teaching, is true faith. Many have studied all kinds of different confessions, yet have not found the true faith. But to him who humbly prays to God for enlightenment, God will make known how greatly he loves man. People are afraid to cast themselves into the flame of Christ's love. They fear to be destroyed. But those who are not afraid discover that they have found eternal life and need no evidence other than the Spirit itself witnessing within to their salvation. The Starets, this is talking, the when it's referring to Starets, is talking about Saint Silouan from Mount Athos. The Starets was profoundly aware that evil can only be overcome by good. The use of force only leads to substitution of one form of violence for another. We often talked about this, and once he said, the gospel plainly states that when the Samaritans would not receive Christ, the disciples James and John wanted to bring down fire from heaven to consume them. But the Lord forbade them and said, Ye know not what manner of spirit ye are of. The Son of Man is not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them. And this ought to be our one thought too, that all shall be saved.
G.K. Chesterton.
So this is from the monk of Mount Athos by Saint Sophrony.
Okay. It's ironic because as you're reading that, I'm watching a quote a video clip on silent of a young man. You may have heard of him. Goes by the name Melvin Gibson. You ever heard of him? And he's on Mount Athos, blessing himself and drinking of holy water. And I can't help but think that's ironic timing because this is a man who, in his younger years, was busy being William Wallace, William Wallace used force in that movie. Now that's a mythical portrayal of William Wallace. They always like to attack that movie for being completely historically inaccurate, that they didn't even wear kilts at that time and stuff like that. But nevertheless, William Wallace became a kind of mythological figure through the poem that his movie was based on, but also the movie really for our generation. And there's a reason why Dave Ramsey always plays the clip of William Wallace saying, "Freedom," every time somebody gets their debts paid off. And they call into his show and they say, "Dave, we've been following your plan for 52 years and we have finally paid off the $500,000 in debt. And we're now 96 years old and we're going to have 1 year left of debt freedom." But that's they play that sound clip of Mel Gibson saying freedom because there's so much passion involved with the way of coercion that movie really demonstrates. But there's a better way, and that's why Mel Gibson, even though he makes those movies, the older he gets, the more and more he is drawn towards the nonviolence, like Hacksaw Ridge and other movies demonstrate. And Mel Gibson had a profound impact, ironically, with you and you coming to Christ, right? Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, yeah. I remember I watched Braveheart later on, but
That turned you to Christ, Braveheart?
no, that's what I'm saying. I watched it later, but prior to that, I watched Passion of the Christ. And Passion of the Christ, when it came out, it like it received a lot of negative, positive publicity. It received a lot of buzz, and people of all backgrounds, of all faiths, were really curious about it. Like, why is there so much controversy about this particular movie?
Yeah.
We have had Jesus's. We had movies portraying depicting Jesus before. Why is this so much special, or generating so much buzz? And there were long, even I'm sure there was a lot of long lines in the United States, but here in India there were like long lines of people buying tickets for that movie, and they were just when it all ended, they were just shattered, breaking down, and just like it says in the passion narrative in the gospel, right? Like the centurion at the foot of the cross, it says, "Surely this is a man. This is a man of God, a son of God."
This is a godson.
Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah, so like it was like the same. The audience watching the movies back at, I was one of those. When we were watching the movie, we were like shocked, and we were astounded by how much one man was willing to go through just to just because he loved us all.
Did you did you
Uh,
did you think of you were not a Christian at the time you watched it, right?
no, I wasn't.
So were you a non-believer or you had another religion or
I was nominally Hindu.
so what did you think of gods before that movie?
The Before that, I thought of when I was thinking, when I was reading the Bhagavad Gita, or any other mythologies. It was like basically like how you would think of Luke Skywalker, Star Wars, or how you would think of, like, like the
Like
Joseph Campbell
heroes,
thing.
like
Yeah, heroes.
Beowulf or the Odyssey,
Yeah,
the Iliad, right?
yeah. Yeah, and basically, I thought, I don't know about anybody else, but I thought that this was like the divine archetype, right?
What
Like
was? What was?
like the gods portrayed in mythologies.
Mhm.
They all like Joseph Campbell said,
Were
the
you
hero
aware
with
of
1,000
Were
faces.
you aware of Joseph Campbell's work at the time when you were a Hindu?
Not not
Okay,
back
okay.
at that time.
But you
I
were
could
still
not
Western
articulate it.
influenced.
You could say that, yes. I mean, you can't escape Western
Yeah, yeah.
influence
What
these
was your
days.
general conception of Jesus before you saw the Passion of the Christ?
I thought, like, when I was a Hindu, I always thought that he was a noble man who did a lot of good during his, like he was like any other prophet, or he was like any other guru or whatever. And
How did they usually
back
depict the way
then,
he looks over there? Do they have a certain way? Do they stylize it in Indian art, or do they use like Western art or American art, or like how do they depict him? Like how there's different
it
Santa
used to
Clauses
be.
around the world. They have different painting. Like
Uh,
how was he depicted in your childhood or whatever before?
since most of the depictions are in Catholic churches, it used to be the case that back when I was growing up, it would be much more westernized depictions.
Hmm.
But nowadays, it's slowly transitioning towards much more Indian style of depictions, where they would be dressed in Indian clothes, or like with Indian characteristics, so on.
Now, when you watched the Passion of the Christ, did you think at one point, does this God that sent that this man is saying he's the son of, does he want him to go through all this to love us? Did you think that, or you didn't think about that?
Uh, well, I
You understand what
mean,
I'm saying? A lot of the Western Christians would watch that movie and they would say, wow, this is what God required of his son in order for him to love us. He needed to bear his wrath on him and let him be tortured like
No,
this for him to love us. Is that how you filtered it out when you're a non-Christian watching this movie?
no, no. I never subscribed to that view. I always looked at,
Yeah,
at
because I
it
know you didn't have the
as.
theological. I'm just saying, well, how did it feel?
No,
Yeah,
I'm talking in general,
yeah,
not
yeah.
theologically. I was not. I was not so academic about it, but I never had that thought that this was a sacrifice required towards God the Father to appease the Father's wrath, or something like that. That just off the bat sound, like when I first heard it. I remember when I first heard it, I read it in a book. Back when I was a Protestant, I read it in a book, and it sounded so off-putting to me when I read that Jesus appeased the Father's wrath, that kind of thing. To me, it was always from the first day. It was always about Jesus enduring the violence of mankind, so that we would not end up destroying one another.
That's
Uh,
exactly how
so
you had felt it when you watched the movie. Just
Yes,
like
yes,
that. Wow,
exactly. That's
wow.
that's exactly how I felt it, and you could say that I had some kind of a Girardian kind of worldview before even reading Girard. Girard was only articulated and explained it very well, it and made it all made sense for me. But
Yeah.
I did have that view before before even getting introduced to Gerard, that this was sacrifice to mankind as opposed to sacrifice to the Father. It was He was actually appeasing mankind's wrath and not God's wrath, when Jesus was being crucified right there. So yeah,
So that moved you to want to follow this man, Jesus.
yeah,
What did that look?
yeah.
What did you think you were signing up for when you said, I want to follow him? Was it that night? Did you say, I'm going to join a church? Or did you just say, I want to be like that guy? He's my hero now. What was it like?
Well, to be frankly honest with you, initially it was more of an act of rebellion than some an enlightenment. And
When you
I
saw him
say
flogged, did you see the brutal reality of like Indian police violence and the establishment?
yes,
Ah,
yes,
interesting. Yeah. So you saw
yeah.
him as a
So
political. You saw him as a political. I'm sorry if I'm interrupting, but just to follow what you're saying, you saw him more like a political figure, right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, somewhat like a socio-political rebel,
Wow. Well, he is
and
political. Yeah.
yeah, because like all my one
Wow.
thing about
Wow.
Indian.
Wow. That's really cool. You
Yeah,
just
one thing
didn't know.
about living in Indian culture, or you could probably say that about any non-Christian culture or whatever, is that it doesn't give you, you're never taught the true sense of what justice really is. And justice is, from the perspective of Christ, is the protection of the marginalized, the protection of the vulnerable, right? And uh, uh, I growing up in India, I always saw these nuns from the missionaries of like sisters of the missionaries of charity, Mother Teresa's
Yeah.
order, and I saw them, hugging the leper, and
That was before your conversion or after?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that was before. And I saw, and I always thought, I did not ridicule them, but I always thought, I was always curious as to what made them care about these destitute people so much.
So joining Jesus made you. It kind of felt like you were diving into the punk rock cultural scene of counterculture, right?
Yeah, that's
The
why I said
underground.
it's like,
Yeah.
initially I felt, initially I was reactionary. I was a rebel against. I thought of myself as a rebel against what I was uh, born into. And so it was only after a lot of years that I started taking Christianity much more seriously, and as a result, I saw it for what it is not just a rebellion, but a total, flipping of the worldview, total turning the entire world upside down. Because so I in as a result I saw much more that how satanic the world order really is, and how much it needs Christ.
Now you've seen this online world has melded cultures together in a disembodied forum in which everybody can interact with everybody else. And now the right wing, or so-called right wing and online right, the younger ones especially, and ones who will profess to be a deeply traditional Christian, are now starting to make it popular to be anti-Indian. How does that make you feel as someone who has been, you were watching the movie Babe when you were a child. You've been watching all of these American movies and music, and you are in an area of India which has a cultural tradition of being Western. You have a lot of critiques of India. You have a lot of critiques of all the corruption, but yet you see your fellow Christians in America and other places who are reacting to their own grievances like you were originally when you converted to faith. You're reacting as a rebellion against the political order. They feel like they're rebelling against their political order, but in that process, they are finding it an easy target to dehumanize people who live in India or people who come to America from India. How do you process that?
To be honest, like it doesn't feel so good, because Indians are not really a monolithic culture. Like America, it's made up of many ethnicities, it's made up of many languages, made up of many different cultures, all molded together. And you, it just seems too much of a like when people critique India or stereotype it into something, it seems so much simplistic. It seems to me like something a Southern Baptist preacher would say about Hindus throwing children to the crocodiles or something akin to that. It's just ridiculous. Of nothing like that happens in India. Of course, like you said, there
Southern
are
Baptists are
places.
politic. Southern Baptists are pretty politically correct today, so you got to.
Well, yeah, I mean, back in my childhood, we used to get those
I think
tracks. This
the
one,
Southern
this one.
Baptists. Yeah, I think you're thinking of fundamentalists like independent Baptist churches that might be a little bit extreme.
Yeah, I
Today's
think
Southern
so. Yeah.
Baptists are, they read Rick Warren books. They're very multicultural usually. But go
Yeah, I
ahead.
think I think you got it correct. Thanks for the correction there. What I'm referring to is like have you ever got those chick tracks?
Yeah, I love
There's
those. I love those.
so so it reminded me. It comes across as that, it's like the current thing, and this backlash against Indians, and on top of that, like it's just I don't know, like as a Christian, I mean, you can have that kind of reaction towards Indians, and I would say fair play to you and whoever it is. Like, if you're criticizing Indians for the corruption or for the scamming or for hygiene or whatever, I mean, fair play to you. Like we have already been introduced to Western culture. We are basically noobs to Western culture. So it's like an ancient tribe getting to find out how Western civilization works and adjusting itself to it. But at the same time, like a lot of the hideous stuff, that's being said about Indians, it just seems unchristian to me. It doesn't reek of a Christian civilization. It doesn't. It reminds me more of how Hindus in India would look at outsiders. So there's a lot of overlap between the new right or whatever it is in the West, between them and the Hindu nationalists over here. There's not a lot of difference. The Hindu nationalists scapegoat lower caste people, or Muslims or Christians, and or whatever, those anti-nationals whom they would deem anti-nationals. And the new right also does the same thing with their own set, with their own unique outsider groups, whether it's illegals or whether it's blacks or whether it's
It
it's like they
reminds
say
me.
that the
It reminds me of that one time I was talking to somebody on on another show, and he said, "I don't like Ethiopians," and he started going on a tear about Ethiopians, and I was like,
yeah, you
"He's
can
like, do
just
you like Ethiopians?" And I was like, "The only Ethiopians I could think of was like Prince Ermia Selassie, who's a friend of mine, through and another gentleman who's a great guy," and I was like, "I have no problem. I mean." Prince Ermia Selassie is one of the nicest, kindest guys you ever talk to, classy individual. I don't have a grievance with him, and the only other Ethiopians I've really encountered, a couple friends here or there that I've met along the way, and then really nice taxi cab drivers in D.C. area. Sometimes I remember that, but there's this kind of people are so scared, and they're estrogen dominant, right? And so they're scared and they're fear driven and they're stress driven and they're fermenting their body a lot. Their body is fermented with lots of excess lactic acid that just curdles the body into a putrid stew of fermentation. And they're just desperate to flail around at somebody else that's an easy person to kick, and they think about the bad experience maybe they've had at a gas station or a hotel that was owned by an Indian or so, that they thought was an Indian, who knows. But they use that and they say, well, these guys are bad guys, so get them out of here, because they're frustrated that they don't have control over a lawless anarchistic government, right? Epstein's getting a pass, all the criminals get a pass. Hillary Clinton gets a pass. Bill Clinton gets a pass. All the abortion keeps going. The wars keep going. The bombs keep hitting kids, and they're so frustrated because a lot of them would like to stop some of this stuff, and they would like to roll it back and have more freedom and more cohesion in their country, and yet they see it all unraveling, so they have to scapegoat somebody, right? That's what Girard would probably say on a lot of this.
yeah, yeah. So like the Christian, like Girard said, this is a very profound passage that Girard has in his book, Things Hidden Since the Foundation of the World. That
Never heard of it.
I know. So he said, like, he was talking about, or I said, I see Satan fall from lightning. I forgot which book it is from, but he says to be a Christian is to recognize that you have a scapegoat.
Yeah.
I was talking about the conversion experience of Saint Paul, right? The Saul of the Damascus experience that he had with Jesus, and it's very profound, because Paul's Paul's revelation of Christ is that why are you a persecutor? Why are you persecuting me? Jesus says to Paul, why are you persecuting me? And this is like the core of the Christian message. The core of the Christian message, according to Saint Paul, is from his experience, is not to find out that God is one, or not to find out that God is Trinity, or not to find out that any cultural thing or theological belief, whatever, but is to find out that you are a persecutor. You are unconsciously persecuting a scapegoat, and this is the the most difficult thing. And I must confess my own tendency towards scapegoating. It's I mean, if you go through my social media, it's like a miserable diary of sorts, where you'll find a lot of scapegoating being done there. And this is what personally, and I'm sure everybody else has to struggle with, is that to
Have
how
you
to
tried
keep
punching
yourself.
a pillow instead of doing all those nasty tweets?
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying, and God have mercy on my soul. You know,
Well, I'm a wrestling
I can.
manager, so if you ever need to take your anger out in the ring, maybe if you do some training, and maybe if I could talk to Sam Hyde, we can have you guys fight it out one day, and I'll manage one of you guys. We'll flip a coin.
Yeah.
I'll back you, so I can hit him with a chair if I need
Well,
to.
It's if you're a manager, it's not so wise to let your plan out so fast.
Well, he
Like you
well,
would like it to hit it. You would
well, what
want
if
it to
this
be
is the
hidden.
art of misdirection?
Oh yeah, you would
And
hit
you just
hit me
ruined
with
that.
a chair. The big swerve.
Look, I'm going to hit anyone who's the best means of being able to get to the next stop on my road to total domination and performance art and wrestling. So that's whoever I
Yeah,
have to hit. But anyways, um, I think we're going to book that match in the future.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
or somebody. I want to see Sam Hyde fight somebody. Uh, that'll put butts in the seats. We need more physical stuff, man. People are just, the reason why I bring that up, sorry to disrupt it, but everybody's so mad at each other online. They just need to wrestle it out, you know? Men used to wrestle it out. And I think it's a primitive thing in some level, violence, but if it's done in a healthy way with some limitations to the, not getting out of hand and killing people, I think that a lot of this stuff should be worked out on the playground, so to speak. These overgrown, children who are in their 30s need to get outside for a little bit, do a little backyard brawl, settle their differences, and then have an icy afterwards. Split a cheeseburger. What do you think?
It depends on what you mean. Are you talking about MMA style fighting, or are you talking about pro wrestling, which is not really going to harm anybody?
Yeah, I mean, if you do MMA style without rules, you're going to kill someone on accident. So probably not the best.
Well, I think what God wants us to do, as according to what's uh, what's in the experience of Saint Paul,
Yeah,
is much more harder than letting out steam and punching a pillow. It's basically like, you know, I wish it was that easy, punching a pillow or, fighting Sam Hyde or whatever, but it's much more difficult. And that's why Christianity, it's not enough to just be a cultural Christian. Like any person can say he likes Christmas carols or hot chocolate, like that new atheist. What's his name? Christopher Hitchens. Was it Christopher Hitchens or other Dawkins? I think he
yeah,
said that he would prefer Christmas carols to. You would prefer that to a Muslim call to prayer or something like that.
yeah.
So he said it's not like, okay, you can have like a superficial Christian revival even, and you can have good Christmas carols or whatever, but if you don't find out who your scapegoat is, or whom you are scapegoating, then it's just all window dressing,
Yeah.
to use a very famous Christian metaphor, Christmas metaphor,
Yeah.
is
Here's,
window dress. Yeah.
yeah. Window dressing. Here's a quote where it says, "What do you do with the mad that you feel when you feel so mad you could bite? When the whole wide world seems oh so wrong, and nothing you do seems very right. What do you do? Do you punch a bag? Do you pound some clay or some dough? Do you round up friends for a game of tag, or see how fast you go? It's great to be able to stop when you've planned a thing that's wrong and be able to do something else instead and think this song. I can stop when I want to, can stop when I wish. I can stop, stop, stop any time. And what a good feeling to feel like this. And know that the feeling is really mine. Know that there's something deep inside that helps us become what we can. For a girl can someday be a woman, and a boy can be someday a man."
That sounded like a song lyric.
That was Saint Fred of the neighborhood.
yeah. But
Isn't that
that
so beautiful when you read it? It's like you feel like you're swimming down a river, you know? It's very powerful. It makes you deeply empathize with children. Like he had such a way, and he was really in touch with the divine, because he had such a tender window. I don't know if you're familiar with him a little bit, his personal life, but he had such a tender window to the. Have you seen that documentary about him and stuff? It's worth checking out. But he had such a empathy with the child approach to life, and look at how he explains. You know, do you pound some clay or some dough? You know, do you round up friends for a game of tag to see how fast you go? And then he says, you can stop, you can stop, you can stop. That's nothing more mimetic than that. There's nothing more positively mimetic than that. And we need more of that. And I don't understand, but I'm going to say this. I don't understand how cynical the generation that grew up on Mr. Rogers has gotten, that they raised by that man on some level. They were also raised by a bunch of bad examples like Looney Tunes smashing people's heads with hammers. You don't know what that does to someone's neural brain development when they're 2 years old watching, people smack their heads with hammers 24/7 and get ran over by cars. I'm starting to doubt Looney Tunes. We thought that was the good old days of safe cartoons, and you look back at that stuff, you think, what does that do to your neuroplasticity as a little brain? Watching that stuff and think that, they're all smiling after they hit themselves repeatedly with cars. Um,
it was worse for children back in the Jesus' time.
yeah.
They had to see crucified people on the roadside, and you could say it's Looney Tunes is day night picnic compared to what the children of Gaza is facing right now, as they are being burned alive and they are being just horrible. Some of the images that come across on social media. It's just like you said. What do you do? Is the song lyrics? What was it like? What do you do when the world seems wrong? Something like that, right? And
When I
everything
just
like that.
is that something else, or you're talking about what I just said?
No, the
What do you
what
do
you
with the
said.
mad that you feel when you feel so mad you could bite? When the whole wide world seems oh so wrong, and nothing you do seems very right. What
Yeah.
do you do? Do you punch a bag? Do you pound some clay or some dough? Do you round up friends for a game of tag or see how fast you go? It's great to be able to stop, BB, when you've planned a thing that's wrong and be able to do something else instead and think this song. I can stop when I want to, can stop when I wish. I can stop, stop, stop anytime. And what a good feeling to feel like this and know that the feeling is really mine. Know that there's something deep inside that helps us become what we can, where a girl can be someday a woman and a boy can be someday a man. And it reminds me of Soren Kierkegaard's quote where he said, with God's
Yeah.
help, I could become myself. He's talking about that issue.
Yeah.
Something deep
Yeah.
inside can help us become ourselves. And that's hard for a little child to sing that. You're right, when their whole city's being bombed to smithereens, because of the sins
Yeah.
of some group that they had no say so running their neighborhood. They want to play with toys too. They want to have fun. They want to fill their belly with food.
And
And
it's
there's
also
collateral damage. And just like those Epstein children, those victims being assaulted every day and dehumanized and told that they're inferior race as they're being assaulted over and over and over again. And then Donald Trump, for him to betray the grace that God's given him with his public voice and say, why are you still talking about Epstein? I mean, what a sad thing. It makes you feel a lot of mad inside, doesn't it? These things. Yeah.
it's like an endless cycle kind of thing, right? Like it's you bombing these children, or you're doing this to these children, or even the children who are being who have to watch Looney Tunes. Even them, like it's like generational trauma. It's like creating an endless cycle of trauma, and that.
Well, somebody told me the other day, they said that when they grew up, their mom would, if she was mad at them, would say, oh, I'm going to call the police and have them take you away for good if you don't stop or whatever. That's traumatic.
Right.
Do you really believe that as a
That is.
child, people are going to come with guns and take you away forever? I mean, how could someone who loves you and protects you say that? And yet that happens like that. That's mild compared to probably how most children are raised in America. You know, everybody makes America out to be the shining example of you know, everybody's just you know, living a cozy life, but you know, there's a lot of people who have generational violence and you know, single family homes and all kinds of different types of situations where there's horrific assaults and things happening to children, and you wonder how they get through the mad that they feel, and then you wonder what how do we get through the mad that we feel? You know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
overwhelming. It is overwhelming.
it is. And that's why, Jesus came to break down that generational trauma.
Yeah,
And that's why, it didn't make sense for me to believe that his sacrifice is some kind of appeasement to the father. It made more sense to me to, okay, here I am. I'm God in the flesh. For centuries, you all have been killing each other, murdering each other, and thinking that this is the way to go. But you seem that everlasting peace that you are always seeking through violence seems to evade you. Well, here I am. I offer myself to you.
yeah,
Kill me so that you can have this generational peace.
yeah,
It's like that scene from a lot of people misinterpret that scene from Silence. That Scorsese movie, which is talking about, which is depicting the persecution of Christians by the Japanese shogunate, and they force these Christians, particularly these missionary priests, to step on this marble, or whatever it is, stone plate with the depiction of Christ on it. And when the protagonist, the priest, ultimately decides to step on it to save his, the rest of his Japanese, you know uh, parishioners or disciples, there's a voice that comes, and a lot of there was a lot of debate about what that voice is from. Is that voice from Satan, or is that voice from Christ?
yeah.
I believe that voice is from Christ. A lot of Christians believe that voice is from the devil, because that voice was encouraging that priest to step on it, because
Yeah.
that was his, the mission. That was the mission
And
of Christ.
and I felt like the Japanese were young converts culturally, and so I don't, you know, I don't want to, you know, belittle whatever their maybe they had a deeper faith. I mean, it was a absolutely deeper faith than most people have, but on some level, it felt like they were kind of getting the point of Jesus a little wrong. Like they were all wanting to get filleted alive, you know, like fillet me alive so that I might be worthy to be saved. And it's like fillet me alive. I want to get filleted by a bad guy. And it's like, I mean, the martyrs did that too, and that early church martyrs did that. And I almost feel it was like they were one upping each other about who can get filleted alive in the most torturous way. And there's a beauty in that, but that's not the point of the gospel. You can't build a city from a garden if you're getting filleted alive all the time. You know, all you have is fillet. There's nothing left to build, and so you have to at some point establish a certain love for your neighbor, right? And that's what that voice told him to do. Stop letting these people get killed.
Yeah,
You know, stop letting these
exactly.
people be killed, and that means you know, oh, you outwardly rejected me, but that was the point, is that you saved me, and that leads me to what you're kind of getting at there, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Just because, if we think of it like that, if we have a problem with us stepping on the cross of, and I'm not saying we step on the cross of Jesus, but under the circumstances, we all did step on Christ. We all did. Like, that's the point of the gospel, and that Jesus
Yeah.
is has been crucified so that the cycle of violence stops once and for all. It stops, and we don't have, like, there's a particular way that the cycle of violence can continue if you are, like what the Iranians have, like this martyr. I want to be a martyr. I want to be a martyr. It's like it reminds me of this video I came across. What you just said, and this might shed some positive light on the Ayatollah. So I ask forgiveness in advance for that blasphemy.
Oh,
But
I love Iran. This is a very pro-Iran show, and it has been since I was 17. So there's nothing I can do about
yeah,
it. If they've got a list,
like
they've had me
I,
on the list since 17. If they have a naughty list for saying you like Iran, I like Iran.
well, I mean, a lot of people don't share our views, David. So, like I believe that Islam is a sacrificial religion and Christianity is the right religion. But there are ways that, like this video that I saw, this like child came up, like I think it's a 8-year-old or 10-year-old boy came up to the Ayatollah, the current Ayatollah, not the old one. The So he came up with the Ayatollah Khamenei and said, "Supreme Leader, I want to be a martyr." And the Ayatollah says to that kid, "Okay, I tell you how to be a martyr. You complete your studies, be a good Muslim, and grow up to be 80, 90 years old, take care of your family, and this is how you be a good martyr." And that's like, I think that the Ayatollah, in spite of the sacrificial religion of Islam, gave a very Christ-like message to that boy. And this like this shouldn't be such a
Which
blasphemous thing to say, or
which
this shouldn't be such a heretical thing to consider, because there are such a thing as God uses whom he wishes to use. He will raise up an Islamic nation to represent Christ. If the so-called chosen people fail, as we have seen countless times in the Old Testament.
and
you
we
know
and
uh,
we know a lot of people that don't like Pope Francis, right? And
yeah,
a lot of people don't like the way he was supposedly cozying up to the CCP and all these things, and playing
right.
footsies with authoritarian leftist stuff and globalist, COVID nonsense. But at the same time, I saw a clip, and I think I shared it with you, but he was talking to a little boy who was crying, you know, because his dad had died and his dad was an atheist, but his dad made sure that he was baptized in the faith himself or something. And the little boy was saying, to Pope, is my father in hell? And the Pope said, well, he thought enough about taking care of you, and he just couldn't believe it himself. And he said, I don't think you have to worry about that. And I thought, there's a lot of people who are just blinded by religion as an ideology, and they just want to throw a rock and stone the adulterous woman that they see in Pope Francis there. But that's not Christ. Christ is the one who, what kind of a child needs to hear, your father is going to, because he had some mental, he raised you right, but he had some mental confusions about things. So therefore, you know, good luck, son. He's tortured forever right now. Have a nice night. What is that? That's not good news. Certainly not good news. Um, Saint Sophia of Clysora, I think you posted this. What is the fear of God? Not to fear God, but to be afraid, not to upset the other, not to harm him, not to wrong him, not to blame him. I like that.
Yep.
That's not something that, that's something that turns that on its head, because most people who are really big on the fear of God rhetoric are very quick to want to send that one to go to hell, and that one needs to be bombed, and that one can be sanctioned, and that one can be starved, and that one can be this, and that one can be that, you know, because they don't have any concern about, bringing down. They have no problem upsetting the other, no problem harming him, no problem wronging him or blaming him via politics or whatever mechanism necessary. And yet, I like the way this saint puts it, that, that's what fear of God is, to have reverence for the other. Wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. I mean, many of us, like when we talk about the fear of God, we fear, like, we don't know what the wrath of God is in the Bible. Many of us take it as, Zeus hurling down thunderbolts from heaven, but the the Bible does not specifically the gospel as revealed by Jesus Christ, who is the summation of the Torah, who is the completion of the Torah, as revealed by Jesus, that is not at all whom we worship. We don't worship a God who hurls down thunderbolts from heaven. We don't worship, you know, this sacrificial God who will punish us if we, let's say, if we fail to fast on this particular day, or if we fail to pray on this particular day, because God is immense in His grace. He is abundant in pouring out His grace. That's why Jesus says, God makes the rain fall on both the evil and the good people. So, if we humans were in the place of God, I'm sure we would be selective in whom, God, whom rain falls down on. We would probably have it fall down. I would probably have it fall down on India and not on those whom I consider to be oppressive. Or if somebody else were made God for one, just like that movie Bruce Almighty, right? If somebody was made God, he would be selective in it. But God is not selective. God makes the rain fall down on everybody,
Yeah.
and that in and of itself is proof for that God uh, blesses countless nations
Yeah.
through Jesus, right?
Yeah. I'm going to leave it with this. There's a headline from Mattel.com. Barbie introduces first ever Barbie doll with type 1 diabetes.
Barbie doll with type 1 diabetes.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing. The right, because they like to react, will just mock that, right? And say, this is ridiculous how bad society has got when babies' toys have diabetes. And a lot of them would say this is the embrace of the decay, the sickness, and all that. And you can see that there. And it is a company that just sells toys and so forth. So it is just a company. But I see the work of Christ in this, because if you think of the kingdom of God from the perspective of children, there probably is, type 1 diabetes is not like type 2 diabetes, where it's a disease of, just of environmental exposure to linoleic acid and
So
other things
type
like
1
that.
is more like
Something,
you're
yeah,
born
you're
with
born
it.
with it. Yeah. And I can imagine, I remember there was a little girl when I was a child who in elementary school had type 1 diabetes, and she would have to wear she'd carry this little thing, this insulin pump thing. And I remember little children kind of, it wasn't too bad, but there were some kids that would make fun of her, make her feel bad. And I thought about it, I was like, a little child like that could maybe use a doll that makes her feel like, I can still be somebody represented in a fantasy story that I want to have in my imagination explore, and maybe that helps them. And I don't, obviously, we're not going to get our highest ethics from corporate, plastic. But the point is these things mean things, and I look at it anthropologically, that a society that can make a doll for someone with a disease, for a child, is a society that's deeply haunted by the cross. And may we live up to that haunting, and turn away from the resistance to it.
Yep.
Take care, sir. I appreciate your time.
You too.
Go to neighborschoice.com and read, click on our essay section. You can read some of the great articles that Surit and some other authors have contributed to our website. There's a lot of good food for thought there. You can also email us hello@aneighborschoice.com and leave us a thought or a question, or if you have a question or a comment about some of the things we've explored. What does the fear of God really mean? That's a question that you can think about. How does it mean to love your neighbor? What does the impact of Jesus' depiction of the cross for people around the world? Is it a political experience for a lot of folks, or is it transfixed through some kind of religious prism that may not be accurate? Those are questions that you can respond to in the comments. And therefore, I think we'll look forward to that dialogue. I'm David Gornoski. Godspeed.